All right, so today we're going to dive into something kind of strange, almost.
Yeah.
Like an X-Files episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Um, Over the past few weeks, there's been this wave of like mysterious drone sightings across the U.S.
Hmm.
And it's gotten everyone like buzzing from, worried citizens to even like top government officials.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame people for being a little freaked out. I mean, unidentified objects in the sky, it's pretty much straight out of science fiction.
That's right out of the movies, right?
Yeah, but what's so captivating about this is that it's not just, like one or two isolated incidents. We're seeing these sightings popping up all over the place, multiple states, from quiet neighborhoods to like really high security military bases.
Yeah, and that's what's really got me hooked on this whole thing. It's not just like, a couple blurry photos on social media. We're talking about like at least 6 states: New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Virginia, even Ohio.
Wow.
And it's not just, random people reporting these things. We've got reports of trained military personnel spotting drones near places like Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Station all.
Okay, now that's a little unsettling.
Right. It's like, come on. It's not your average Joe saying, hey, I think I saw something weird in the sky. These are people who are literally trained to identify aircraft.
Right. And those are sensitive locations. We're talking about a major ammunition production facility and a naval weapons station.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, right, what level of technology are we dealing with here? Could these drones be equipped with, surveillance gear or even something more sinister?
I mean, your guess is as good as mine at this point, but it definitely raises some serious questions about who's behind this and what their intentions might be.
And it's not just military bases either. There have been reports of drones over President-elect Trump's golf course in Bedminster,
Oh, wow.
enough to like temporarily close runways at Stewart International Airport.
No kidding.
And we even had airspace restrictions above Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And that's, a place deeply involved in cybersecurity and intelligence. It's almost like whoever is behind this is, they're sending a message or at least probing for weaknesses.
It's hard to say for sure, but the pattern of sightings is definitely intriguing. It suggests a level of intentionality that goes beyond just random chance or coincidence.
Yeah, and what really creeps me out? The
Yeah.
reports coming out of New Jersey residents there are talking about like nightly occurrences, clusters of drones flying in formation for hours.
For hours.
Some sightings have lasted for up to 6 hours.
6 hours. That's insane. I mean, even those really high-end commercial drones you see like professionals using, they don't have that kind of battery life.
Right. So what are we talking about here? Some kind of super secret military tech or something even more advanced?
We're definitely talking about something beyond your average hobbyist drone. I mean, 6 hours of sustained flight, that requires serious battery technology, maybe even some kind of mid-air refueling system that we're not aware of.
Okay, so we've got sophisticated tech, strategic locations, and long-duration flights. This is starting to sound like a full-blown conspiracy theory.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions just yet, but it's definitely worth taking a closer look at what the authorities are saying about all of this.
So what is the official word? Are they just as freaked out as the rest of us?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, honestly. On one hand, you have the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. They're issuing statements, trying to reassure the public.
Okay, so they're saying, don't panic, everything's under control.
Well, not exactly, but they are emphasizing the possibility of mistaken identity.
What do you mean?
They're suggesting that many of these sightings could be misidentified aircraft, maybe even those new electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, the eVTOLs.
eVTOLs, those flying car things.
Yeah, it's not crazy to think that someone might mistake one of those for a drone, especially at night.
Yeah, especially if you're not really sure what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that trained military personnel have reported sightings, right?
Right, and that's what makes this whole thing so tricky. It's hard to dismiss the observations of people who are specifically trained to identify aircraft.
I mean, if those guys are getting fooled, then who isn't?
Exactly. And it's not just the military folks who are raising concerns. Senator Blumenthal, he's on the Senate Homeland Security Committee, has publicly expressed some serious skepticism about the government downplaying this whole drone thing.
Really? So he's basically saying, hey, I don't think you guys are being straight with us.
Pretty much. He's even suggested that they know a lot less than they should about these drones, which is pretty concerning coming from someone in his position.
Okay, so we've got conflicting narratives here. We've got authorities urging calm, suggesting misidentification, but then you have experienced observers and even some senators who aren't buying it.
It's a real head-scratcher. And it gets even more complicated when you factor in another theory that's been floating around.
Another theory.
Yeah. Some experts, like former FBI agent Tom Adams, are saying that some of these sightings might actually be commercial drones, maybe even copycats inspired by all the media attention.
Copycats. Like, people saw this on the news and thought, hey, let's freak everyone out by flying our drones near military bases.
It sounds ridiculous.
I know.
But think about it. There are hundreds of thousands of registered drones in the U.S. People use them for all sorts of things: real estate, photography, agricultural surveys, you name it.
Yeah. I guess it's not totally impossible that some folks are taking advantage of this situation, maybe even unintentionally.
Right. Maybe they're just out flying their drones for fun and they don't realize how close they are to a sensitive location or how suspicious it might look.
So we've got mistaken identity, possible copycats.
Hmm.
But what about those trained military personnel who saw something unexplained? It feels like we're missing a piece of the puzzle here.
We are, and that missing piece is the big question mark hanging over this whole thing.
The big question being,
Who's behind it? If these aren't just misidentified aircraft or harmless hobbyists, then who is operating these drones? What are their motives? Why the sustained activity, especially around sensitive areas?
and why all the secrecy? Why aren't the authorities being more transparent about what they know?
It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of easy answers right now.
Oh boy. So where do we go from here? What's the next step in this drone-filled saga?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. We don't have all the information, and we may not get all the answers anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we should just shrug our shoulders and ignore it.
Right. We can't just pretend this isn't happening.
Exactly. We need to keep asking questions, demanding transparency, and pushing for a thorough investigation. Because whatever is going on here, it's definitely something we need to pay attention to.
Agreed. This is a story that's not going away anytime soon.
And it's a story that has a lot of people on edge.
For sure. And speaking of being on edge, let's talk about the incident at Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about that one.
Yeah. In the middle of all this mysterious drone activity, we have a confirmed case of someone actually flying a drone near a sensitive space facility.
And not just any someone. A Chinese citizen was arrested for flying a drone and capturing unauthorized footage during a SpaceX launch.
Whoa, hold on a minute. So in the middle of all these unexplained drone sightings, we have a confirmed case of someone actually doing something illegal with a drone. Talk about bad timing.
The timing is certainly interesting, but it's important to note that as far as we know, this incident seems to be isolated. It doesn't appear to be directly connected to the other widespread sightings we've been discussing.
Okay, good to know. But it does highlight just how vulnerable these places are to drone activity. Imagine if that drone at Vandenberg had malicious intent.
That's a scary thought.
Right. It could have disrupted the launch, caused damage, even put lives at risk.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this whole drone situation so unsettling. It's a reminder that these devices in the wrong hands can pose a significant threat.
And it raises the stakes for this whole mystery we're trying to unravel. I mean, if a single individual can cause that much concern, what are the implications of these coordinated long-duration flights we're seeing elsewhere?
That's the million-dollar question right now.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got the sightings themselves, the conflicting narratives from authorities, and the unsettling possibility that some of this might be intentional, coordinated activity.
Yeah, we've got a lot of pieces to this puzzle, but we're still missing the most important one.
Which is?
Who's behind it all? And what do they want?
Yeah, that's the big enigma at the heart of this whole thing.
Yeah.
As of December 16th, 2024, the origins and operators of these drones are still largely unknown.
And the FBI is investigating. But so far, they've been pretty tight-lipped about what they've found.
I guess that's not too surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, investigating something like this is going to be incredibly difficult. We're talking about a massive airspace drones that are relatively small and hard to track, and then there are all the legal complexities of even trying to intercept them.
You're hitting on some of the key challenges here. Even with all the fancy radar systems and other detection technologies, we have pinpointing the origin of a drone, especially one operating at night, can be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It's like they just appear out of thin air.
Almost.
Mm.
And even if we could definitively say, yep, that's a bad guy drone, what are our options? It's not like we can scramble jets every time someone spots a blinking light in the sky.
Right. I mean, that would be chaos.
And extremely costly. Not to mention the potential for collateral damage. So we need to be very careful about how we respond to these sightings.
So what are we supposed to do? Just sit back and watch while these things buzz around our skies?
Well, inaction isn't a great solution either. That's why you're seeing such a range of responses from different levels of government. At the local level, there's a lot of pressure to do something and anything to address the concerns of citizens who are understandably feeling uneasy.
I can only imagine how I'd feel if I saw these unexplained drones hovering over my neighborhood every night.
It's got to be unsettling, especially with so little information coming from the authorities.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the things that local authorities are doing?
Well, some governors are taking matters into their own hands. Kathy Hochul in New York has ordered the deployment of advanced drone detection systems at key locations. And in Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro has gone so far as to order state police helicopters to try and track down the origins of these drones.
Whoa, state police helicopters chasing drones. That's a visual I wasn't expecting.
It really shows how seriously they're taking this. They're not just sitting around waiting for the feds to figure it out.
Right, they're taking a proactive approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it highlights the tension and the sense of urgency surrounding this whole situation. You have local officials feeling the pressure to act, while federal agencies are trying to maintain a balance between acknowledging the concerns and avoiding unnecessary panic.
So it's like a tug of war between caution and action.
In a way. And in the middle of all this, you have the public trying to make sense of these conflicting messages and figure out what level of concern is warranted.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in. When you hear about unidentified drones, your mind can't help but jump to some pretty wild scenarios.
It's the unknown that often fuels the most intense reactions. And in this case, the lack of clear information, coupled with the unsettling nature of the sightings themselves, has created a perfect storm of speculation and anxiety.
So how do we cut through all the noise? How do we separate fact from fiction and get to the bottom of what's really going on here?
That's the challenge we're facing. And it's a challenge that requires critical thinking skepticism and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations.
So this isn't just about drones. It's about how we as a society deal with uncertainty, rapid technological change,
Yeah.
and the potential threats that come with them.
You're absolutely right. This is a bigger conversation about our relationship with technology, about the choices we make, and the future we want to create.
And that's a conversation we need to have now before it's too late.
Couldn't agree more.
I mean, let's be honest, when you hear unidentified drones, your mind kind of goes to like, government conspiracies, right? Like, are we being spied on by our own government? Or is it like, a foreign power messing with us?
It's easy to let your imagination run wild, especially when there's so much we don't know.
Yeah, and it feels like the more we learn, the less we actually understand.
Well, that's often the case with these complex situations, right? It takes time to separate fact from fiction and to get a clear picture of what's really going on.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all of this? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that this situation is unlike anything we've really seen before.
Okay, what do you mean?
We're dealing with a new kind of threat, one that doesn't fit neatly into our existing categories. It's not a traditional military attack, it's not terrorism, and it's not just some random pranksters messing around.
So what is it then?
It's something new, something that challenges our assumptions about security, privacy, and even the nature of our airspace.
Okay, so this is uncharted territory.
Pretty much. And that makes it all the more important to approach this with a clear head and a willingness to consider all possibilities.
So no jumping to conclusions.
Exactly. We need to be careful about attributing motives or making assumptions about who's behind this until we have more information.
So how do we get more information? I mean, the authorities seem to be pretty tight-lipped about what they know.
Well, we need to keep pushing for transparency. We need to demand answers from our elected officials, and we need to hold them accountable for ensuring our safety and security.
Right, we can't just let this fade into the background. We need to keep the pressure on.
Exactly. And we need to be wary of those who try to exploit this situation for their own gain.
What do you mean?
Well, there are already those who are using this to push their own agendas, whether it's calling for increased military spending or advocating for more restrictive drone regulations.
So we need to be careful about who we listen to and what information we trust.
Exactly. Critical thinking is more important than ever in situations like this.
So how do we cut through all the noise and figure out what's real and what's not?
Well, that's where good journalism comes in. We need to rely on reputable news sources that are committed to fact-checking and providing balanced coverage.
Right, not just clickbait headlines and sensationalized stories.
Exactly. We need to be discerning consumers of information, and we need to be willing to challenge our own biases.
Okay, so let's say we do all that. We stay informed, we think critically, and we demand transparency from our leaders. What then? What are some of the concrete steps we can take to address this drone situation?
Well, I think there are a few key areas we need to focus on. First, we need to improve our ability to detect, track, and identify drones.
Right. If we can't even tell who's flying these things, how can we hope to stop them?
Exactly. So we need to invest in better technology, whether it's radar systems, optical sensors, or even artificial intelligence.
So like a drone defense system.
Something like that. We need a way to monitor our airspace more effectively and to distinguish between harmless drones and those that pose a potential threat.
Okay, that makes sense. What
Yeah.
else?
Second, we need to develop clearer guidelines for law enforcement. Right now, there's a lot of confusion about what the rules are when it comes to drones.
Yeah, I mean, can the police just shoot down any drone they see as suspicious?
It's not that simple. There are legal issues, safety concerns, and of course, the risk of escalating a situation unnecessarily. So we need to establish clear protocols and make sure that law enforcement agencies have the training and resources they need to respond appropriately.
So basically a set of rules of engagement for drones.
Exactly. We need to know when it's appropriate to intervene and what level of force is justified. And those decisions need to be made with careful consideration, not in the heat of the moment.
Makes sense. So we've got detection, tracking, identification, and clear guidelines for law enforcement. What's the third area?
Third, and perhaps most importantly, we need to have a serious national conversation about the role of drones in our society.
Okay, but what do you mean by that?
Drones are becoming increasingly prevalent. They're being used for everything from package delivery to aerial photography to infrastructure inspection.
Yeah. It seems like drones are everywhere these days.
Exactly. And as their capabilities continue to grow, so do the potential risks and the ethical dilemmas. So we need to have a public debate about how we want to use this technology, what limits we want to place on it, and how we can ensure that it's used responsibly.
So this is about more than just security. It's about privacy, ethics, and even the future of our society.
Absolutely. This is a conversation that needs to involve everyone, not just experts and policymakers, because the choices we make now about drones will have far-reaching consequences for years to come.
Okay, so it's time to start thinking about this seriously. No more kicking the can down the road.
Right. We need to be proactive, not reactive.
Right.
We need to anticipate the challenges and develop solutions before it's too late.
So this is a call to action.
Absolutely. We need to get informed, get involved, and make our voices heard. Because the future of drones and the future of our society is ultimately up to us.
It feels like we've really gone down the rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground for sure.
From those initial, like, spooky drone sightings to talking about, the potential for AI to go rogue and, like, take over the world, it's been quite the journey.
Well, that's the beauty of a deep dive, right? You never quite know where the conversation's going to lead you.
True enough.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that this drone situation has raised some pretty profound questions about technology in our future.
Oh, absolutely. I think this whole incident has really highlighted the fact that we're entering a new era, an era where the lines between the physical and the digital worlds are blurring, and where the pace of technological change is accelerating at an unprecedented rate.
And it feels like we're still trying to catch up, trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality and how to ensure that these powerful technologies are used responsibly and ethically.
Yeah, it's like we're playing catch up with the future, always trying to anticipate the next big disruption and figure out how to adapt to it.
So what do we do? I mean, how do we even begin to grapple with these complex issues when it feels like the ground is constantly shifting beneath our feet?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that there are no easy answers. This isn't something that can be solved with a quick fix or a new piece of legislation.
Okay, so no magic bullet.
I'm afraid not. This is a challenge that requires a fundamental shift in our thinking, a willingness to embrace complexity and to engage in ongoing dialogue and debate.
So it's not about finding the right answer. It's
Well,
about
yeah.
asking the right questions.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of critical thinking and ethical reflection, and about empowering individuals and communities to have a say in shaping the technological future they want to live in.
Now, this is a call to action then.
Absolutely.
Right.
This isn't something that can be left to experts or policymakers. This is a conversation that needs to happen at all levels of society, from the dinner table to the halls of government.
So what are some of the key questions we should be asking? What are the things we need to be thinking about, discussing, even arguing about?
Well, one of the most pressing issues is regulation. Right now, the laws and regulations governing drones are lagging far behind the technology itself.
Yeah, it's like trying to apply rules from the horse and buggy era to the age of self-driving cars.
Exactly. We need a new framework, one that takes into account the unique capabilities of drones, the potential risks they pose, and the rapidly evolving nature of the technology.
So are we talking about things like mandatory registration, stricter licensing requirements, designated flight paths, maybe even altitude restrictions?
All of those things are on the table, and we need to have a robust public debate about what makes sense and what strikes the right balance between innovation and safety.
Okay, so regulation is key. What else?
Well, another major concern is privacy. Drones equipped with high-resolution cameras and other surveillance technologies raise serious questions about how our personal data is being collected, used, and potentially abused.
It's like the panopticon in the sky, always watching, always recording.
Exactly. And we need to have strong legal protections and ethical guidelines in place to ensure that our privacy rights are respected in this new drone-enabled world.
So it's not just about stopping bad guys from using drones. It's about ensuring that even the good guys are using them responsibly.
Precisely. We need to be vigilant, and we need to demand transparency from both government and private entities when it comes to drone surveillance.
So regulation, privacy. What else should we be worried about?
No, I think the biggest long-term challenge is the rise of autonomous drones. Drones that can make decisions and take actions without direct human control.
Okay, so this is where we get into the whole AI taking over the world scenario.
Not necessarily, but it's certainly a possibility we need to consider. As drones become more autonomous, we need to think carefully about the ethical implications and develop safeguards to ensure that these powerful machines remain under human control.
So this is about more than just technology. It's about philosophy, ethics, and the fundamental values that shape our society.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this conversation so important. It's not just about drones. It's about who we are as humans and what kind of future we want to create.
It's about taking responsibility for the technology we create and using it to build a better world.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all agree on, regardless of our political beliefs or our views on technology.
So what can our listeners do? How can they get involved and make a difference?
Well, the first step is to educate yourself. Read up on the issues, talk to experts, and form your own opinions.
So do your research.
Yeah.
Don't just take things at face value.
Right, then get involved. Contact your elected officials, join advocacy groups, attend public forums, and make your voice heard.
So don't be afraid to speak up and to demand action.
Exactly. And finally, support organizations that are working to promote responsible and ethical use of drone technology.
So put your money where your mouth is.
Precisely. Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
And together, we can make a difference.
Well, this has been quite the deep dive. We've gone from mysterious drone sightings to a deep philosophical exploration of the future of technology. It's been a wild ride.
It has. But I think it's been a worthwhile one. Because it's reminded us of something important.
What's that?
That the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create. And the choices we make today will determine what that future looks like.
So let's make it a good one.
Agreed. Let's make it a future worth living in.